In the not-too-distant future, unexplained creatures suddenly materialize and begin destroying humanity, precipitating a cataclysmic event from which few people survive. Many hypotheses have been put up concerning what happened, including the existence of an infectious disease, a purple haze, and a punishment for humanity, but none of them are confirmed by reliable sources. Paul is searching for supplies in town when all of a sudden the sirens begin to cry out. He bolts outside and starts running through the streets, dodging explosives and screaming and hiding when needed. Paul makes it to an abandoned house on the outskirts where he reunites with his babies, whom he must care for alone, as the city fills with black smoke. Paul's boys have developed into healthy teenagers after 15 years. They share a residence and go out during the day to look for supplies, but at night they hide. Joseph covers the windows and tells their dog, Rocco, to come inside as soon as the sun begins to set. Paul chastises Thomas for being late while waiting outside for him to return. Thomas reveals that he enjoys lending a hand to their farm-owning neighbors, the Rose family. Before sitting down to supper, the three of them make sure to lock all of the windows and doors. Paul chastises Thomas once more and threatens to stop allowing him to cross the borders if he is ever late again. Joseph makes fun of his brother for it, and before long, a fight breaks out between them as Paul intervenes to tell them that they are human, not animals. Following supper, Paul is watching his sons play chess when Rocco starts growling and scratching at the floor, drawing his attention away from the game. Paul and Thomas proceed downstairs, taking it as an omen, and are surprised by the unexpected knock on the door. They quickly grab the door to prevent the animals from prying it open because it appears like they are attempting to get in. For a few seconds, there's a lot of hammering and shaking before the animals abandon up and move on. Thomas then chastises Joseph for not helping, but Joseph responds that he has been listening in order to find out more. 3 tries were made. The first took 10 seconds, the second took 20, and the final effort took barely 1. According to Joseph, the first was merely a test, the second was a real attempt to make a breakthrough, and the third was just a frustrated hit. When they inspect the door the following day, all of the claw marks on the wood are visible. Paul and his lads go outside to seek for wood to reinforce the door as it is no longer as strong. After returning home with all of their discoveries, Paul stops by Joseph's workspace in the barn to see how he is doing as Thomas cuts wood. Joseph finally confesses to Paul that he's been attempting to construct a vehicle because he's sick of feeling afraid and trapped. Still, he isn't able to work. After taking a short look and being impressed, Paul immediately makes a few adjustments that allow the car to run. Paul is excited to teach the teenagers how to drive and takes them for a ride. After an hour of traveling, they return home, and Paul says the windows still need strengthening. He then dispatches the guys over the river to salvage. Paul tells Thomas this is more essential than going to the farm, which makes Thomas angry because he was promised he could go there today. Thomas begins blaming Joseph for the brothers' departure in the car, claiming that Paul only dispatched Thomas in order to protect his brother. When they drive by the farm, Thomas gets out of the car and asks Joseph to pick him up on the way back because he doesn't think he needs protection. Paul completes the door reinforcement in the home and stops by the waterfall to smoke by himself. He notices a dark, eerie hole in the rocks as he surveys his surroundings. Joseph, in the meantime, crosses the river, ties himself to the vehicle, and then climbs inside an ancient, abandoned ship in search of provisions. He is momentarily stunned when he discovers a pin-up from a filthy magazine inside a locker. Then he peers deeper inside, only to be horrified when a swarm of beetles emerges from a pile of debris. He needs to flee quickly since they are trying to get to his skin as they fly about him. Thomas assists the family at the farm by helping with chores, but it soon becomes clear that his primary motivation for visiting is Charlotte, the owner's daughter. The teenagers stroll together across the field, obviously infatuated with one another. When Charlotte was younger, she was only permitted to play outside, as she explains to Thomas while holding a rope that is fastened to a tree. She would knot herself if she got close to the tree so that she would have more space to run, while technically still attached to the tree. They also engage in a game wherein they exchange wild beliefs regarding the origin of the end of the world. Charlotte offers Thomas a firm hug when it's time for him to leave. The boys must move quickly because the sun is about to set. When Paul gets home, he discovers Rocco but neither of his sons, which worries him. When Joseph gets back in the car, it wouldn't start at first, but after a few attempts, it does. Thomas is trying to run as fast as he can, but he slips and falls into a crack in the ground. Joseph doesn't spot his brother and continues on his way when he stops by to pick him up. Upon arriving home and informing his father of the incident, Paul instructs him to enter and secure everything while he and Rocco search for Thomas. Thomas awakens in the crevice, his body hurting greatly. With a lighter in hand, he starts scanning the surroundings and is startled to find something reaching through a gap in the wall. Paul and Rocco can even make out its screeching noise. When Thomas cautiously extracts a little dagger and stabs the creature in the hand, it retreats into the hole. A second thing materializes above Thomas and grabs his face as he retreats. Before Thomas can lose consciousness due to difficulty breathing, Paul arrives and pulls the monster back to quickly kill it. Following their checkup on Thomas, Paul and Rocco discover a tunnel leading directly into the crack. They choose to stay in the crack until dawn in order to block the entrance and provide protection because it isn't safe to run through the forest at this hour. The ground begins to tremble as they prepare a flare since they can hear the creatures approaching through the hole. It turns out that the monsters are now underground, using the earth to hide the exit to confine the group inside the crevice. Paul tells his kid and the dog to back up while he inserts the flare into the entrance in the earth while Rocco continues to bark and the crevice continues to rumble. Paul inadvertently causes a tiny explosion that tragically strikes him as well when the aliens attempt to reach out. Joe hears a lot of creaking in the home and decides to make plans. After a few minutes, he falls asleep while sitting in front of the main door with a rope fastened to his chair. Before long, something shifts the wood that covers a gap in the door and reaches inside, growing a nail to see if Joseph is actually asleep. The beast enters when the boy remains silent, but Joseph pulls the rope to show that he was acting. The beast is promptly captured when a cage falls from the ceiling. Joseph, full of pride, throws a blanket over the cage and closes it. He drives outside in the automobile to look for them the following morning because he is concerned that the others haven't returned yet. In the meantime, Thomas is pulling his severely injured father out after excavating through the collapsed earth to reopen the entrance. In an attempt to locate Joseph and lead him back to his family, Rocco also emerges and follows the sound of the car. Right away, the brothers cooperate to get Paul into the car and then to his bed in the house. The beast goes insane when Thomas eventually spots the cage and peeks behind the cover while they are debating how to move further. Reversing the cover right away, Joseph explains that light harms monsters. After that, they patch Paul's wounds as Joseph tells them that the thing ended last night in the quickest time ever, 8 seconds. And he's positive there was another monster that vanished. Joseph realizes something is off as their conduct is shifting to soon. Thomas notes that the animals are cunning. They killed a lot of people in the cave last night, and because Charlotte mentioned that they didn't often visit the farm, it's possible that they came here to exact retribution. Joseph believes Paul killed the animals. Not that, as he puts it, Thomas tries to murder the animal in the cage in order to establish his point. Because he wants to examine it, Joseph tries to stop him, but the creature emerges from the struggle and swiftly hides under the bed. The monster changes to attack when Rocco starts barking at it when it eventually peeks out. Thomas takes an axe to its head as Joseph scrambles to keep it down. With an insatiable curiosity, Joseph brings the body to the barn and begins to dissect it in front of Rocco and other insects. Regardless of the extent of his cuts, he acquires a deeper comprehension of its nature. Then Thomas informs him that since Charlotte's property has a superior house and real medicine, they ought to move Paul there. Thomas coerces Joseph to accompany him even though he doesn't believe the roses can help him. The brothers get Paul back in the car and head to the farm, where Charlotte's parents confirm Joseph's theory. They won't take in someone who is so severely injured since they don't have enough medicine. Charlotte objects, but it is disregarded. Her parents do, however, consent to Thomas staying, giving Paul and Joseph additional resources at their home. After Joseph leaves right away, Thomas follows him, and they get into a fight where Joseph accuses Thomas of causing their father's impending death. In a fit of rage, Thomas throws his brother to the ground and begins to choke him, but he stops himself when he realizes what he's done. As soon as possible, Joseph jumps into the car and leaves with his comatose father, arriving at the farm to join the family. Following that, Charlotte treats Thomas to some really delicious food and gives him a tour of some of her possessions, which he has never seen before. After sharing a tender kiss, Charlotte's father interrupts them by sending his daughter to another room. While returning, Joseph observes that the animals are moving underground as evidenced by the heaps of dirt all around and the sheep scurrying away in terror. Upon arriving home, he notices a dirt trail close to the wall and becomes concerned that the monsters might be hiding beneath the house. Joseph visits the BAM after seeing to his father and begins gathering objects to make a new plan. In addition, he begins to block all of the windows, and when he walks across the home and treads on a carpet, he falls in. He deduces that the monsters are already inside the structure because there is a hole beneath it. Charlotte discovers Thomas poking around the kitchen at the property. He wants to get some medicine and go since he is still concerned about his father. Unaware that someone could overhear them, he gives Charlotte a hug in appreciation and tells her he will return when she gives him the medication. Thomas flees, but before he can get to the gate, a farm worker pulls a revolver and accuses Thomas of stealing. Thomas, in a desperate attempt to convince the man that Charlotte gave it to him, is not taken seriously. Together, the staff members lead Thomas to the barn, where they bind him and play music to mask their impending abuse of him. As a man prepares to shoot them after they seize Thomas's legs, a hole develops beneath him, causing him to stumble and miss the shot. A beast leaps out of the hole as the other men rush to see how he is doing. Charlotte's parents hear a commotion in the main home and wake up. A thing enters the room and attacks as the father lights a candle to look around. As the monster leaps from the father to the mother in an attempt to kill them both, the candle falls and sparks a fire right away. When the father pulls it back, the creature leaps on her before she can get very far, and the mother flees the room in search of her daughter. Before attacking, the monster shook to change into another form and began to spin all over the woman. Charlotte hears about the murders of her parents while she is in her bedroom. When the sound stops, she emerges to find, to her horror, a trail of blood. She follows it to the toilet, where she eventually locates the thing carrying her mother's body in its back. The men are attempting, but failing, to repel the beasts at the barn. They begin to be slain one by one, and as additional creatures keep showing up, those who escape are also pursued. Before long, the barn catches fire, and Thomas breaks free from his bond by toppling the furniture and fracturing the wood. A beast spots him at that precise time, but Charlotte shoots it down before he can strike. The teenagers then flee, and Thomas discovers the house is on fire. They decide to go to Thomas' residence after Charlotte says that her parents have passed away. Returning to Joseph, he fills the hole with furniture in an attempt to buy some time. Then, before getting ready to battle, he gives his unconscious father a quick check and a kiss on the forehead. Suddenly, the door's hole opens, but Thomas and Charlotte are the only ones inside. As Joseph acknowledges that he needs Thomas' assistance, Paul finally wakes up and cuts off their chat. Taking the medication quickly, he instructs his sons to keep battling. After Joseph tells the others about his plan, they search the barn for as many gas cans as they can locate, using Rocco's constant barking as a warning of impending peril. An old freezer is also moved inside the residence by the gang. Next, Joseph builds a pile of furniture and pours all the gas on it, while Thomas and Charlotte start to reinforce every window that is still in place. He also places every explosive device he could find on top of it, along with one of his father's cigarettes that is gradually burning down. Abruptly, a monster descends the chimney in Paul's chamber, and the pile covering the hole begins to tremble. Another creature emerges from the hole, and Thomas stabs it from behind as it passes a door. The beast strikes back right away, but Thomas gets his dagger and stabs it in the head, killing it at that point. When a third tries to attack Charlotte, she swiftly shoots it down. After running to get Joseph, they just start moving the freezer once more when the door behind them opens, exposing Paul, who is now upright and covered in blood, because he killed the chimney monster, taking Charlotte's gun. Paul fires at the floor in an attempt to hit the animals below. But the mob is enormous, and before long it emerges in the hallway, hurtling in his direction. Paul kicks the first one, causing some trembling, and most of the animals fall through the floor due to the weight. A few monsters escape, but the teenagers rush to eliminate them before they can harm Paul, who is pleased with the trio's cooperation. The three teenagers then dash to the freezer with Rocco. Paul shuts the door and stays to buy them some time, refusing to follow them. While Paul recalls the day he held his babies close and assured them everything would be alright, the group hides inside the freezer. Paul keeps the oncoming wave of animals at bay by distracting them until the furniture pile explodes, sending the entire home tumbling and catching fire. The freezer runs for a few minutes after it starts. When it eventually stops, the teenagers emerge and look for Paul frantically among the rubble, only to have a creature leap out of nowhere. The party flees into the car, driving off as the fire-breathing monster pursues them. When the monster gets close enough, Charlotte uses her gun to hit it, causing it to crumble, as her bullets are ineffective against it. The gang, who had always been indoors at night, had never before seen the stars until a few miles later when they pull over and look up at them. When the party gets back to the house the following morning, they've decided not to reconstruct it. They bury all of their loved ones and bid a final farewell after gathering whatever provisions they might find. In an attempt to find a new house in the fields further down the valley, the three teenagers and Rocco depart in the automobile after that. To ensure you never miss any updates on new videos, kindly click the bell icon and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.